Water, the element that comes from the west. Water is the ebb and flow within us that moves in harmony with lunar cycles. Water is the liquid of love that flows from the veins of Earth into our veins of life. Water is like the blood that connects all life and flows through us all. Water is the universal solvent that connects all of us, flows all through us, and dissolves all of us, all into one.
It's not safe to drink the water in Flint, Michigan, a city of nearly 100,000 northwest of Detroit. A plan to save money backfired. And here's Dean Reynolds.
The people of Flint lined up for free filters to make their water safer to drink.
Can I get 3 of them?
Dorothy Bates was one of them.
It's not good enough to drink at all. Not really take a bath in, because my tub, it's just it's brown.
Last year, Flint disconnected its water supply through Detroit and began drawing water from the Flint River instead. The move saved the city about $15 million in annual fees, but the river water, even after treatment, was risky. That's because the very chemicals used to decontaminate the water were so corrosive they peeled lead off century-old pipes and sent it straight to faucets in a foul-smelling, discolored brew. Last month, researchers found elevated lead levels in children, in some cases 2 to 3 times what it was before the switch to the river water. The county last week declared a public health emergency.
It is one of the most damning things that you could do to a child's life course trajectory.
Dr. Mona Hanna Atisha is a pediatrician at the Hurley Medical Center.
Is there any safe level of lead in somebody's blood?
There is no safe level of lead.
What are you doing, bud?
That's kept Leanne Walters up at night. The mother of 4-year-old twins, she noticed mental and physical development delays. But state public health workers were not much help.
We were told by the state nurse, it's just a few IQ points. It's not the end of the world.
I'm an accountant and your governor.
Earlier this week, an editorial in the Detroit Free Press called his response shameful. The paper compared it to Hurricane Katrina, where, quote, the same lack of urgency delayed life-saving aid.
I've apologized.
On Monday, Snyder said it wasn't until October 1st that his team learned there was confirmed lead in the water. But emails first obtained by Virginia Tech researchers show that state officials may have known there was a problem months earlier.
The credit never goes to the person who built a strong foundation. But that's what you have to do first.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bill Harris.
And I'm Sadie Hughes. Thank you for joining us tonight. Flint neighbors can expect to see a lot more open fire hydrants in the coming days. Water officials say they're pumping water through Flint's pipes to keep the system flowing. NBC 25's Walter Smith-Randolph is in the newsroom with our top story. And Walter, what are neighbors saying?
Sadie, neighbors on the city's south side have a laundry list of complaints when it comes to the city's water system. They say their water was brown earlier this week. Hydrants have been flowing since then. Water officials telling me flushing the pipes should take care of any issues with the system. Inez Shepard doesn't have much faith in Flint's water system.
We cannot drink the water. We can't cook with the water, you know what I'm saying, let alone brush our teeth or whatnot.
Her family buying cases of bottled water, but city officials maintain the city's water flows just fine.
I wonder if they would come and drink some water on camera for us. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not safe to me.
Me personally, and I drink Flint water every single day, I have not seen a discoloration.
Despite varying views, city officials now flushing the water system as the complaints continue to trickle in.
Water's brown, has a bad odor. I'm afraid to even feed it to my cat or my dogs.
Flushing it is one of the applications that we can use to make sure that circulation is good and that water stays fresh in the system.
A Freedom of Information Act request shows that Flint, Michigan government lied about the city's main water supply containing lead, placing many Flint residents at risk. RT's Ashley Banks is live in the newsroom. Ashley, what's the latest here?
So, Simone, a Virginia Tech professor filed a Freedom of Information Act request and recently discovered that Michigan state officials knew the city of Flint's water supply was giving children lead poisoning, yet they continued giving residents a false sense that the water was safe. The government had been aware of the increased levels of lead poisoning since July of this year. However, it wasn't until a Flint pediatrician published a study in September showing that lead exposure in children had doubled citywide and nearly tripled in high-risk areas. In April of 2014, Flint authorities wanted to cut costs, so they switched from Detroit's water supply to the Flint River. Flint residents immediately noticed that their tap water appeared cloudy, and in August of 2014, the water tested positive for E. coli. Flint Mayor Karen Weaver has expressed concern that the increased levels of lead poisoning in Flint's children will result in, quote, learning disabilities and the need for special education and mental health services and an increase in the juvenile justice system.
Research is showing that lead can take the place of zinc in a protein that regulates how your genes are transcribed or copied. And when this happens, it can interfere with the development of your nervous system and even red blood cells. Lead is one of the most studied toxic substances, and as a result, more is known about the adverse health effects of lead and how to prevent them than virtually any other chemical. Yet according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 400,000 children suffer from lead poisoning each year.
To you, the people of Flint, I say tonight, as I have before, I am sorry.
We're fortunate to be surrounded by some of the greatest natural beauty in the world. Whether it's the Great Lakes, the Sleeping Bear Dunes, or trails and rivers, it's great to call Michigan home. I'm thankful for all these things and for the opportunity to serve you as governor. I hope you and your family enjoy your time together. Have a great life.
Welcome to the Gubernatorial Town Hall. I'm Christy McDonald. We are on the campus of Wayne State University with Governor Rick Snyder and Congressman Mark Schauer. Our audience is made up of non-committed voters and guests. They will get to ask questions of the candidates.
Undecided voters are the biggest idiots on the planet. Try giving short, simple answers.
More than half of Michiganders were now feeling good about the future of the state of Michigan. You know the last time that happened? It was 9/11.
I agree with that. What do you plan to do about crime in our city?
It was 9/11.
what are your plans for cleaning up our environment?
9/11.
What about our traffic problem?
9/11 happened.
Hi, my name is Wink Coventry, and I have a question about the environment. I would like to ask each candidate, what is your position on fracking, and what plans would you put into effect in the event of contamination of water?
Governor? Yeah, I appreciate it, because we do want energy independence in this country. And to be open with you, fracking is one of the most effective tools to do that, but it's got to be done right. It does need to respect the environment. I'm very pro-environmental. I'm proud to say I'm co-chair of the Great Lakes Governors Conference to take care of the Great Lakes. In Michigan, we do fracking right. I bet I can tell you a stat here that no one would really know of most of the audience. In Michigan, we fracked over 10,000 wells in our state and never had a problem. We do fracking right in Michigan. We have the toughest rules, we enforce them, we work with industry, we get results for more energy independence, and the rest of the country is looking at Michigan as a role model.
We've got to get to our final question. First to you, Governor. Are Michigan residents better off than they were 4 years ago, and how will they be better off in the next 4 years if you're still governor?
Sure. Well, actually, I'm going to cite something Nolan wrote this week. He had an editor's note.
Don't do that.
And it was actually Richard Zuba. There was a poll taken through the paper where more than half of Michiganders were now feeling good about the future of the state of Michigan. You know the last time that happened? It was 9/11. Not 9/11 of last year, when 9/11 happened.
At the very least, these protesters want two-term Michigan Governor Rick Snyder to resign. At most, they want him charged with a crime.
I think he's very culpable to it. I mean, he helped appoint these emergency managers and gave them pretty much singular authority over these decisions.
When you make business decisions like that, you don't care anything about the people.
Turning to the Flint water crisis now, another $28 million is headed to the city.
Governor Rick Snyder signing that measure today while in Grand Rapids after it was passed unanimously in both houses of the legislature. 24 Hour News 8's Joe LaFurgey here tonight with what the governor had to say about Flint moving forward. Joe?
Things could have been done differently. What do you learn from that? How do you make sure that never happens again? And how do you be better and stronger moving forward?
It's been a rough month for the governor. I'm sure he's looking forward to moving on. And to his credit, he continues, though, to address this issue head on when a lot of folks might have gone in hiding.
Yeah. Oh.
And he outlined, he tried again today to outline, yes, there are mistakes were made. We're going to try to figure out where those happened, but you got to move forward, and there's a lot to move forward on here.
We're moving forward.
Moving forward.
Move forward, and there's a lot to move forward on here.
It's been a rough month for the governor.
We have a governor that knew that toxins, pollutants, and eventually lead was leaching into the water and being sent into the taps of people's homes. They knew that the people here did not have the political power to do anything about it.
That's right.
Call this what it is.
It's a genocide.
It's not just a water crisis.
It's a genocide.
You're going to meet a mom tomorrow at this congressional hearing who used to live in Flint, then she moved. She left town to get away from the lead poisoning. As you're going to see, she's considered by many to be the very first case that blew this wide open months before any governmental agency took action.
He gets bathed in bottled water. He's not allowed to drink it.
Leanne Walters had her Flint water tested not by the government, but by Virginia Tech expert Dr. Mark Edwards, who will also testify in Washington tomorrow. Her lead was more than 2,000 times what is considered safe. Her 9-year-old son, Gavin, get this, was losing his hair, had rashes, and would not gain weight. Medical tests proved he had lead poisoning.
I don't want any other moms to go through the feelings that I went through.
In the hot seat in Washington will be this man, the new interim director of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. Since he took over, 2 agency staffers have been put on unpaid leave. Who investigated them? What is the evidence? Did they try any cover-up of their involvement?
It's entirely, from my point of view, within the jurisdiction of the committee to press really hard on how the DEQ performed, or I guess in this case, did not perform.
Republican Governor Rick Snyder has not been invited to testify in Washington. Republicans control this committee. They did not respond to our request today to discuss the hearings in Washington.
And that's why it's so critical for the governor, for this emergency manager, who were the key people responsible and decision makers, for them to come and give their testimony.
So the governor will not testify. The former Flint emergency manager, Darnell Early, will not testify.
We feel that there currently exists enough evidence to arrest Governor Snyder for either voluntary or involuntary manslaughter, and that a full-scale investigation into the Flint water crisis and a criminal trial will yield the information that will send Governor Snyder to prison. We encourage the city of Flint to be vocal and demand that Governor Snyder face criminal charges. Anonymous will stand beside you. We will amplify your voice where the mainstream media will surely fail you, as it has in the past. We will also join you in calling bull any spin that the corporate media is prepared to put on this, as they have on other past crises that affect the welfare of the common people in this country, most notably the poor and people of color. Governor Snyder and his cronies have brought pain, suffering, and possible death to the people of Flint. They have also clearly displayed contempt for the children of Flint. Certainly they have displayed no remorse or guilt. But it all stops now. Because what Governor Snyder will soon learn is that we do not forgive. We do not forget. The people responsible for this crisis will be held accountable. Every wrongdoing will be rectified. The city of Flint deserved better, Governor. Again, justice will arrive in the form of a pale mask. We are Legion. We are the citizens of Flint. Governor Snyder, did you really not expect us?
Mr. Chairman, I was going to let Mr. Cartwright go, but Mr. Craig, I'm getting very concerned about your testimony because I want you to remind you that you are sworn to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So let's go over what you just said, and I got to get it right in here because I'm kind of concerned because I don't want the public to not see this for the accurate truth. Mr. Craig, Governor Snyder recently named you as the new head of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality last month. Your boss, Governor Snyder, and I'm hoping he's watching, by the way, gave this 2016 State of the State address. In his speech, Governor Snyder seemed to take responsibility for the Flint crisis, stating that, and I quote, "The buck stops here with me," and that, quote, "I take full responsibility to fix the problem so that it will never happen again." However, in the same breath, Governor Snyder also tried to blame the city of Flint, as it sounds like you're doing right now, and he said this, and I quote, "This crisis began in the spring of 2013 when the Flint City Council voted 7-1 to buy water from the Karenga-Nandi Water Authority," end of quote. Ms. Craig, do you agree with Governor Snyder's statement?
The question that I responded to, sir, was if they would never have changed their water source, would this issue have happened? And I believe that's a true statement because they were on Detroit Water and Sewer Department water, which was phosphated, and they had a 30-year history. So I apologize if I misrepresented
No, I'm not finished. Just hold on. I'm not finished. We reviewed the resolution passed by the City Council and the minutes from the meeting. At no point during the meeting did the City Council vote to allow the Flint River to be used for drinking water. Isn't that correct, Mr. Spring?
I haven't reviewed those personally, but that's my understanding.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to introduce into the record a letter we just received yesterday from Sheldon A. Neely, who served on the City Council from 2005 to 2014. He was actually there. He was there, Mr. Craig, all right? In his letter, Mr. Neely explains that the City Council did not, do we have the letter? Where's the letter? You got it? Where's the letter? Oh, they have it. In his letter, Mr. Neely explains that the City Council did not make the decision to use the Flint River because, quote, the Flint City Council had no power to actually enact any laws for the community. Everything went through the emergency manager, end of quote, who was appointed by the governor. He also says this, and I quote, did you need something, Mr. Chairman? No, oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Would you please?
We'll enter the record without objections to order.
You're making me nervous with your finger in it. This is what he said. It was the emergency manager, Ed Kurtz, who made the decision to use the Flint River as a primary source of drinking water for the city of Flint. Mr. Craig, are you aware of Mr. Kurtz's actions?
No, sir. I was not in the seat at the time.
And Mr. Craig, so Mr. Neely also wrote that, quote, Governor Snyder's account of the events leading to this water crisis are completely wrong, end of quote. Why would Governor Snyder try to blame the city council for this decision when it was his own appointee who made it, and you have a city council that has no authority? There's something wrong with that. That's why I interjected here, because I want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Now, let me ask you, I'm not finished. Do you have any reason to believe that Mr. Neely is not telling the truth?
I have no reason to believe.
Now, Mr. Neely's letter is supported by statements from Flint's former mayor, Dane Walling. On January 22nd, 2016, he stated, and I quote, after City Council and I expressed support for a new water supply from Lake Huron, the emergency manager, Edward Kurtz, went behind closed doors with the Department of Environmental Quality and decided to use the Flint River as an interim source, made the budget changes, and put that in place, end of quote. Were you aware of Mayor Walling's statement?
I am not.
All right. Based on the evidence, it seems that Governor Snyder was trying to blame the city of Flint for actions of his own appointee. And he did this in his State of the State address to the entire population of Flint. Now, let me ask you something else. Are the people paying right now in Flint for water they cannot wash in and cannot use and cannot drink? Are they paying water bills? And is it a part of the recovery? You said you want to make them whole. Is that part of it? Why would they be paying for water that they cannot even use, that is poisoning them? That's not American. As Mr. Chairman said, this is not a third world country. Are they paying those bills? Are you going to relieve them of that?
Everyone deserves safe drinking water, and that's the expectation. And yesterday, the governor introduced a supplemental for $30 million to help with that issue. The number one issue, as we've spoken with the mayor, is to make sure the utility remains solvent. And the billing is actually more of a city issue, but we understand and respect that, and everyone deserves water that is safe.
Mr. Chairman, as I close, these are people who are struggling. They're struggling. They've come over here, all the way here from Flint. I don't know how they got here. I guess on a bus. But the fact that they're here. But you know what, Mr. Craig and Mr. Chairman, they're also Americans. They're also Americans, just like you and just like your children. And I don't, and I want to be real clear. And the chairman will bear me out on this. I have said, I don't care whether it's EPA, whether it's local, whether it's state. I want everybody who is responsible for this fiasco to be held accountable. I'm not protecting anybody because that's not our job. We are the last line of defense. And if we don't do it, nobody's gonna do it.
7 years ago, something happened in this town. Something very simple happened. 7 years ago, something was added to this water, added to this town's drinking water. It did something to the teeth, or for them, and the children's teeth just don't have as many cavities anymore. And here's how it happened.
Fluorine is the most reactive element on the planet, and because of this unique property, fluoride quickly assumed a major role in the growing chemical industry of the mid-20th century. In the manufacturing of aluminum for giants like Alcoa, steel for corporations like US Steel, fluorocarbons for refrigerants, and Teflon for DuPont. But fluoride's most significant role was in uranium enrichment during the race to develop the atomic bomb during World War II, and the many thousands of bombs that would follow. Just months before the Second World War ended, 107 barrels of sodium fluoride were delivered to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it made history as the first city to add fluoride into its public water supply.
There really was not ever a good study that clearly demonstrated safety and effectiveness.
Dr. Kathleen Thiessen is one of the top scientific experts in the world on fluoride. She served as one of 12 committee members for the National Research Council's scientific review of fluoride in 2006.
There were several things suspected in the 1940s and early 50s that they knew about. They ignored. They said, we're not going to talk about, nobody discussed this out loud. We're just not going to pursue these things.
Dr. Harold Hodge, a distinguished toxicologist on the Rochester team, has carefully investigated the safety of fluoridation.
Well, to put it very simply, fluoride is safe at 1 part per million. Now, we sometimes say, is fluoride poisoned? Yes, of course it's a poison.
Now, Dr. Burke, your research shows that if all of the United States had been fluoridated, that would mean about 70,000 extra deaths because of cancer per annum. Those are remarkable, impressive, and in fact rather disquieting figures. Could you shortly describe your research in this field and what results did you get from it?
Yes. The 70,000, of course, would represent 1/5 of all the cancer deaths in the United States, twice as many from breast cancer in women, and twice as many as from lung cancer in man. Our studies involve comparing the deaths of all persons in the 10 largest fluoridated cities of the United States with the 10 largest non-fluoridated cities in the United States year by year. And we obtained a very remarkable curve, which you can see here perhaps. Here is the fluoridated, and here is the non-fluoridated set of 10 cities each. Here's where the fluoridation started, and before this time, both sets of cities were identical. But no sooner had fluoridation started than this curve began to go up, the deaths began to increase, so that this effect occurs very promptly within 1, 2, or 5 years.
Now this, sir, is conclusive evidence that fluor kills because of cancer.
It is one of the most conclusive bits of scientific and biological evidence that I have come across in my 50 years in the field of cancer research.
Would this then, in your opinion, be the end of fluor in water, in drinking water?
It should be the end, and in the United States, it should so be the end by federal law known as the Delaney Amendment, which says that anything found to induce cancer in man or animals cannot be legally put into the food or drink of man or animals. And so, and this is all less than 1 year old, so that it entirely changes any previous ideas of fluoridation that anyone may have had. because this is the first real indication of an important effect.
Now, in this country, of course, the state of the dental state of the Union, the way people's teeth look, is incredible indeed. Would you say that stopping fluor had other effects than increasing the dental problems in this country?
Well, I would rather look at it that it would certainly help the cancer death situation in this country, which I'm sure most people would agree is far more important than a temporary benefit to teeth in adolescent children. This, you see, amounts to public murder on a grand scale. It is a public crime, it would be, to put fluoride in the drinking water of people.
A new effort is being launched today to reverse our reliance on a chemical that's supposed to improve our health, not jeopardize it.
We're talking about fluoride, and of course it's something all of us are exposed to every day. iTeam's Roberta Baskin is here with the details on this. Roberta.
Well, if public health officials knew then what they know now, would we have fluoride? Would it be added to our drinking water? Well, today a coalition of scientists, dentists, and doctors are taking action to stop fluoridation until it is proven safe. For decades, Americans associated fluoride with good dental hygiene, which is why it's still added to most public water supplies, including many in the Washington area. The American Dental Association calls fluoridation one of the best public health ideas ever.
Absolutely, fluoride is safe. It's effective. It has reduced the decay rate in the population by about 20 to 40% over the last 60 years.
But today, 600 health professionals and scientists, including Dr. Arvid Carlson, a Nobel laureate of medicine, are calling on Congress to ban the use of fluoride immediately. Among the petitioners, Bob Carton, a former Environmental Protection Agency scientist. He says fluoridating water was a mistake from the beginning.
It was a foolish thing to do years ago. They didn't have enough information. They hadn't really been tested.
In fact, a 2005 Centers for Disease Control study found too much fluoride has caused irreversibly discolored teeth in 1 out of 3 children. And a major report by the National Academy of Sciences says toxic levels can lead to severe, permanent pitting of the enamel in children. Fluoride can also build up in the bones to cause pain, stiff joints, and skeletal abnormalities when they get older.
It's a cumulative poison. It just gradually builds up and it gradually causes harm.
But the EPA isn't about to make any quick decisions about the Academy's finding that toxic levels of fluoride must be drastically lowered.
We take their recommendations very seriously. We also have a commitment to get additional information and validate it and work with other public health authorities.
Last November, concerns over excess fluoride prompted the American Dental Association to warn parents not to mix baby formula with tap water during an infant's first 12 months.
So given an infant's small weight, certainly we've put recommendations out there for mothers.
And for years, the Food and Drug Administration has required warning labels to keep toothpaste out of the reach of children under 6, and if swallowed, to get medical help or contact a poison control center right away. In 2005, more than 22,000 people did.
Too much of any good thing can be a bad thing.
Still, the American Dental Association insists fluoride is crucial for preventing tooth decay.
We prevent a lot of suffering and pain that's totally unnecessary and preventable, both in adults and children.
The EPA, the FDA, CDC, ADA, and other combinations of the alphabet have argued the safety of fluoride for years. Maybe it is time to get all those different views together at a congressional hearing and straighten out all the mixed signals that the public is getting. Meanwhile, fluoride remains.
I'm Phil Wu, and it's all very confusing. I'm going to, since I'm told you're all a very thoughtful group and a very deliberate group, I'm going to try to not do the usual campaign kind of speech. So, water fluoridation, it's been around for 56, 60 some odd years. You've all heard that Portland is the largest metropolitan area that doesn't fluoridate. A couple 100 million Americans consume fluoridated water. A number of Oregon cities already fluoridate, some of them rather surprising. So this is not rocket science, this isn't brand new. The safety issue is well established. You don't have 60 years of a track record and not have safety well documented. That's why the Center for Disease Control, my professional organization, the American Academy of Pediatrics, heartily endorses and recommends water fluoridation as safe and very cost effective compared to every other intervention that you may want to do to improve oral health. Locally, you know, this debate is back and forth with all kinds of quotes about this study, that study, this study, that study, and it's all very confusing.
This is putting in the drinking water a drug, as defined by the FDA, and Phil may disagree with me on this. I have the documents from the FDA, you can see them afterwards, that says this is a drug and they have the authority to regulate it. The Europeans see it the same way. And when they say, if you're putting a drug in the drinking water, you can't control the dose. And no other drug is like this. And people are not giving their informed consent. It is a real ethical issue, and I see it the same way.
We're going to go into questions and answers. Phil, I received regular fluoridation at the dentist as a child. I still had a significant amount of decay. What is the proof that fluoride actually helps?
Oral fluoride, when you swallow it, works topically two ways. One is, it's appearing in your saliva 24 hours a day. When you are sleeping, eating, drinking, as long as you've got saliva in your mouth, fluoride will be present in your saliva in low quantities, but it's a constant bathing process. And the second is, presumably you are drinking water multiple times during the course of the day. 5 times, 6 times, 8 times, you're sipping from glasses, water bottles, whatever. And so you are also bathing your teeth with fluoridated water multiple times during the day. So you are having many kinds of contact to topical fluoride. So that's how fluoride basically works. All right. I'm not sure about the other part of the question.
It is harmful to our health. When you're putting it in the water, we have no choice. Right now we got a choice. It is not ethical. And the entire premise of putting a drug in the drinking water, the only one that has ever been done, ever. You're gonna put Lipitor in there because some people have heart disease? You're gonna put Prozac in there because some people have mental problems? God, I hope not. And yet we're doing the same thing. You can't put a drug in and not expect harmful side effects when there's no control for dose. It makes no sense whatsoever. It was yes. Before, the city council, you have 5 people on city council making a medical decision that none of our doctors could make. To give us a drug without our informed consent. Well, so at least we've got a vote. It scares me that it's going into the political process. I don't think it should ever be in the drinking water in the first place.
Of course,
but at least we got a vote.
Many of us will argue about the whole premise that fluoride is a drug.
The fact is that fluoride is not a drug. It's a mineral, much like calcium and potassium.
This is an extremely misleading statement. While fluoride can exist in mineral form as calcium fluoride, the fluoride ion itself is not a mineral. More importantly, there's a critical distinction between fluoride, calcium, and potassium. Calcium and potassium are essential nutrients, but fluoride is not. Also, if fluoride was truly like calcium and potassium, you should be able to walk into your local grocery store and purchase fluoride supplements, just like you can with calcium and potassium, but you can't do this with fluoride. Instead, because of fluoride's toxic nature, you can only get a fluoride supplement if you have a prescription from a doctor or a dentist.
Children who drink fluoridated water while their permanent teeth are forming have less tooth decay later. Once the teeth are in the mouth, fluoride helps to reverse early signs of decay. This is how children benefit from drinking fluoridated water.
Does it make sense to add a chemical to our water supply that does not need to be swallowed? In my professional opinion, it would be reckless to do so, particularly a chemical with as many safety concerns as fluoride. After all, those who actually want to apply fluoride to their teeth can easily do so by choosing toothpaste with fluoride. A far better approach to reducing tooth decay is to provide low-income families with toothbrushes, fluoridated toothpaste, and dental floss.
Centers for Disease Control, the American Dental Association, the National Research Council, and the Environmental Protection Agency all agree that the 0.7 level is safe and effective for babies, kids, and people of all ages.
There is a critical error in Dr. Wu's statement here that parents should be aware of. Although Dr. Wu claims that the CDC says 0.7 parts per million is beneficial for baby teeth, the CDC disclosed to the U.S. Senate last year that it is unaware of data showing benefits to teeth during the first 6 months of life.
My concern is based in part on a large body of research finding that modestly elevated levels of fluoride can reduce a child's intelligence.
This may be the most serious misrepresentation of all. This article, often cited by anti-fluoride activists, reviewed studies from China, Mongolia, and Iran, including water samples in which the natural fluoride levels were 400 to 1,200% higher than the recommended level for fluoridating water in the U.S.
Dr. Wu is off base here. First, he fails to mention that one of the studies in the Harvard review found significant IQ loss at just 0.9 parts per million among children with iodine deficiency. This is only slightly higher than the level Portland plans to add to its water. 10 other studies in the Harvard review found significant IQ loss at 3 parts per million or less, a level of exposure that some Americans may be exposed to when all sources of fluoride, including fluoridated water, are considered.
Thousands of studies and over 65 years of experience show that water fluoridation at recommended levels safely strengthens and protects the teeth and bones of children and everyone else in the community.
Although Dr. Wu refers to thousands of studies, Portlanders should know that fluoridation's safety and effectiveness has never been proven by a single randomized controlled trial. A randomized controlled trial is the gold standard for medical treatments, and drugs generally won't receive approval by the FDA without having one. In Western Europe, 97% of the population now drinks water without a single drop of fluoride added to it. In Sweden, for example, the parliament rejected fluoridation back in the 1970s based on the medical recommendations of Dr. Arvid Carlsson, a Nobel laureate in medicine. With all due respect to Dr. Wu and the U.S. health establishment, I agree with Dr. Carlsson.
Tomorrow, if you live in Portland, you're going to decide whether or not fluoride will be added into the drinking water.
And if they do, those who are against fluoride say they won't stand for it. Ken Body is live at Mount Tabor tonight, where opponents just launched their last-minute blitz. Ken?
Well, Kelly, we were up here about half an hour ago at the end of the rally, but before we came up here to Mount Tabor, we went to a northeast Portland neighborhood where we actually heard that some people may not drink the water if they add fluoride to it. In Portland's Irvington neighborhood, the signs of opposition to fluoridating Portland's drinking water are easy to find.
I did not vote for it.
Why not?
Well, I just don't like too many chemicals in my food or my water or anything.
ocean shed, contagious like a glare. Something here is feeling so unfair, like a sinking ship in the sea. Somebody see me, like raining gold, raining gold, raining gold, raining gold. Timing's like a game I don't know how to play. There's a vague illusion of it here. 30 seconds pass till it showers over me. Raining gold, raining gold, raining gold, raining gold, raining gold tonight. Raining gold, raining
The oil spill by BP has left tar balls all over the sea. So don't go swimming down in the south unless you want tar balls in your mouth.
Five years ago, BP's oil well deep in the Gulf of Mexico exploded. 11 workers were killed on the Deepwater Horizon rig 40 miles off the Louisiana coastline. Oil gushed for nearly 3 months in what has been called one of the worst environmental disasters in US history. Millions of gallons of black crude oil spewed into the ocean, contaminating beaches and wetlands from Texas to Florida. Birds and fish died. Thick, sticky brown oil washed ashore, covering wildlife and white sandy beaches. On July the 15th, 2010, after several failed attempts by BP, the oil gusher was finally capped. But scientists say despite the cleanup, the effects of the spill will linger. In 2013, it was reported that dolphins continued to die in record numbers, with infant dolphins dying at 6 times the normal rate. In the same year in Louisiana, 4.6 million pounds of oily material was removed from the beaches, over double the amount in 2012. The spill led to the firing of then BP CEO Tony Hayward, who came under fire for his controversial remarks when he said he wanted his life back.
We're sorry for the massive disruption it's caused to their lives. And you know, there's no one who wants this thing over more than I do. You know, I'd like my life back.
Good evening. As we speak, our nation faces a multitude of challenges. And tonight, I've returned from a trip to the Gulf Coast to speak with you about the battle we're waging against an oil spill that is assaulting our shores and our citizens. On April 20th, an explosion ripped through BP Deepwater Horizon drilling rig, about 40 miles off the coast of Louisiana. 11 workers lost their lives. 17 others were injured. And soon, nearly a mile beneath the surface of the ocean, oil began spewing into the water. Because there's never been a leak this size, at this depth, stopping it has tested the limits of human technology. Already, this oil spill is the worst environmental disaster America has ever faced. But make no mistake, we will fight this spill with everything we've got for as long as it takes. We will make BP pay for the damage their company has caused. And we will do whatever's necessary to help the Gulf Coast and its people recover from this tragedy. Tonight, I'd like to lay out for you what our battle plan is going forward. If there are problems, we will fix them.
BP estimates that 4.7 million barrels of oil leaked into the Gulf. It claims that a quarter has been recovered by emergency platforms. Only a small fraction is skimmed from the surface. The greatest concern is that the crude will reach the mainland less than 80 kilometers away. BP wants to avoid such a widely visible scenario at all costs. BP and the U.S. Coast Guard agree to spray a chemical dispersant on an unprecedented scale. Another estimated 40 million liters are burned intentionally on the surface. The remaining 2/3 of the crude seem to have disappeared, according to official numbers.
Two years ago, the people of BP made a commitment to the Gulf, and every day since, we've worked hard to keep it. BP has paid over $23 billion to help people and businesses who were affected and to cover cleanup costs. Today, the beaches and Gulf are open for everyone to enjoy, and many areas are reporting their best tourism seasons in years. We've shared what we've learned with governments and across the industry so we can all produce energy more safely.
Raw crude from this region typically has a reddish color. As the true extent of the spill became clear, BP sought federal approval to deploy massive amounts of chemical oil dispersants. It was hoped the unprecedented move would keep the crude from reaching the coast. Two months later, the oil still gushes into the deep sea, affecting a surface area the size of Portugal. Public pressure builds up. BP and the Coast Guard react by publishing these images, hoping to keep control of the spin. The chemical dispersant is called Corexit, as in corrects it. The manufacturer claims it's effective. That's what BP hopes. More than 4 million liters of Corexit are deployed, according to official numbers. The petroleum industry has come to like dispersants. Simply spray them onto the surface, and the oil seems to disappear. Essentially, the chemical dissolves the plumes of red oil into fine droplets. This is how Corexit works. The combination of chemicals breaks the oil down into tiny globules that sink below the surface and are suspended in the water. That makes the oil invisible to the naked eye. But it's still there, It has just been distributed throughout the water column. Corexit may not be as harmless as claimed. Ships involved in the cleanup have reported an increase in engine problems. Corexit dissolves essential rubber seals that are impervious to seawater. Cleaning doesn't seem to help. Few oil industry insiders have commented publicly on the spill, but John Hofmeister, the former boss of Shell America, has made his views abundantly clear.
Something went badly, badly wrong.
Back in 2010, the Deepwater Horizon rig exploded, spewing 134 million gallons of oil into the U.S. Gulf Coast. After that, 11 people died in the explosion, and today, federal prosecutors and the approval of a judge decided to drop the charges of manslaughter, so no one is going to go to jail after the BP disaster.
We will make BP pay for the damage their company has caused. And we will do whatever is necessary to help the Gulf Coast and its people recover from this tragedy.
And I am determined that we do the right thing, we do it the right way, and we communicate in an open and transparent way.
Even though there is no oil visible, it's everywhere.
In a system that puts profits over everything, small gangs of billionaires are given free rein to plunder the planet. One of the richest power cliques in the empire's inner circle is also imperiling all life on Earth at an alarming rate, only to pad their vaults with cash. In the United States, the oil industry is a giant cash-engorged beast with the loyal servitude of the state at its beck and call. Its vast accumulation of wealth has led to its vast accumulation of power and influence in today's society. A resource that's the pivot of the modern industrial economy has made every oil-rich nation a prize to be won by every aspiring world empire. In the past half-century, the U.S. has sacrificed untold lives, limbs, and resources in its scramble to seize larger and larger pieces of the market. From funding dictators to fueling proxy battles to all-out wars of aggression. Entire countries like Saudi Arabia, Azerbaijan, Qatar, and others have been established as oil monarchies, owned by American oil corporations, armed to the teeth by imperial sponsors. Every president from Truman on officially dubbed access to oil a matter of national security, meaning worth going to war for. The oil industry's vast power was pioneered by the son of a snake oil salesman, John D. Rockefeller, a cutthroat capitalist who bought his first refinery in Cleveland in 1865, later named the Standard Oil Company. Many emerging oil companies were competing, but Rockefeller's Standard Oil tipped the scales. They used an illegal deal with railroad companies for cheaper transportation to bully more than 20 refineries into selling themselves to Standard Oil under threat of having to compete with impossibly low oil prices. Other strong-arm tactics were used to buy up the industry. For example, if a refinery didn't want to sell itself, Rockefeller would buy the pipeline, then just cut off its oil supply. The dried-up refineries had no choice but to submit to Standard Oil's clutches. By 1879, Rockefeller's shady gangster tactics, with the help of big banks and lavishly bribed politicians, allowed Standard Oil to gobble up 90% of the country's oil refining industry. With over 100,000 workers under his belt, Rockefeller was harshly anti-union and squashed any attempts for workers to organize. The modern-day monopoly was born, one of the economy's biggest sectors in the briefcase of a handful of fat cats and top hats. This self-serving clique of oil tycoons not only subverts our supposed democracy, whose thirst puts us on the path of more disastrous, profit-driven wars, but it imperils all living things on Earth.
Today, a new study by researchers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration looked at why dolphins died in such large numbers after the Deepwater Horizon spill of 2010. It was the strongest link yet to the spill and to the deaths of bottlenose dolphins. More than 1,000 dolphins have died in the Gulf since 2010. The spill lasted nearly 3 months, spewing millions of gallons of oil and chemicals into the Gulf of Mexico. We get the latest from William Brangham, who weekend viewers will recognize, and he's now here with us as our newest NewsHour correspondent, and we welcome you.
Thanks, Judy.
To the team.
Great to be here.
William. So let's talk about what researchers are saying. What do they say these new studies show?
What they're saying is that this has been the first definitive link where they can directly connect the death, this massive die-off of dolphins, as you mentioned, over 13, I think it's 1,200, 1,300 dolphins, linking those deaths directly with the oil spill. I mean, scientists have been studying these dolphins for several years, ever since the spill occurred. This is the first time they've said, we now know why they've died and in such large numbers, and it's because of the Deepwater Horizon disaster.
Now, BP is pushing back, of course. They are saying there's no proof that there's a connection to the oil that came out of the Deepwater Horizon rig. What do scientists say about that?
That's true. This has been BP's argument all along. And in fact, they've also pointed out that there were die-offs of dolphins that happen all the time on the Gulf, and that actually some of these dolphins had died off before the spill even occurred. But scientists went to great lengths today to say that they've looked at all the other factors that have caused die-offs in the past, and that this particular spill, the impact that the oil has had on marine mammals, they can directly connect it to the dolphins that they've seen. And in fact, the research that they did showed in the areas where there was more oil in the water, more dolphins died. Areas where there was less oil, less dolphins died.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
I'm giving you a gallon of BP gas because you're my best friend. I'm giving you a gallon of BP gas because you're my best friend. Why are you giving me a gallon of... Because you're my best friend. I'm giving you a gallon of BP gas because you're my best.
This is the... This stuff floats in big clumps out here in the water. The little fish, it should be green. Of course, it's all dead because the oil is coated in here. You can see this stuff. This is exactly where the baby fish hatch, and it's a nursery. It's a nursery for the smaller fish that live out here. And you can see there's nothing can survive this.
Hello, I'm Tony Hayward, President and CEO of BP. Our accidental drilling spill again in the Gulf is a tragedy that should have never happened. And to all those affected, I want to say, we are deeply sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. We're sorry. Sorry.
The explosion and fire aboard the Deepwater Horizon and the resulting oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico never should have happened. And I'm deeply sorry that it did.
Is a frontier town. It is located on a barrier island in the vast wetlands 2 hours south of New Orleans. The houses are built to survive the dramatic rise in sea level that accompanies the storms that frequently pummel the island. Life here is intertwined with the sea. Les and Barbara have lived in Grand Isle for many years. Les works for the state of Louisiana and as such gets reports every morning on the progress of BP's cleanup operation.
What did it look like at the worst day you saw it? Did it really have big black blobs all over
it? It wasn't black, it was kind of a rusty orange.
So you've been following this day by day?
I've been here every day.
I mean, do you think there'll be no more oil coming up now, or is that the end of it, or are you expecting to see more?
No, I think more will come.
We can't predict
we
that
can't
yet.
predict that. But
my
I'm
meeting
sure
this morning with the operations center at Lafourche over at Fort Fouchon gave me a report that they picked up 9,000 bags of oil and waste yesterday on the beach and in the water.
So how come we're being told that the oil's pretty much gone?
There's a guy from Nestle that doesn't think water is a human right. I mean, that guy should be hunted down and shot, right? And they're gonna sit and just talk about, talking about all the, I don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, we gotta get America back to work.
It's like, dude, this guy wants to own the rain. Can we do something about this guy? He was at Nestle. You're supposed to be happy, like making cocoa for people. And this guy's like going, well, people are running out of water. What if we owned all the water and we kept it under our place? And in the future, when everybody's, that's how you picture the guy talking. I want to own the water. I want to have it underneath my house. And just, I'll come to the door in a robe, slightly ajar, right? Just a complete animal.
Water should be better managed, should be better valued, and has to be better preserved. If we give water value, there will be an incentive to invest in looking after our supply. You know, most of fresh water we use, up to 90% in fact, is used in agriculture. As a food producer, we depend on the long-term sustainable availability of this precious resource. I'm glad water is top of the agenda today. It's where it should stay.
Nestle, the largest food company in the world. Nestle Group is based in Switzerland and takes in an estimated $1 billion in annual revenue. And no, not just from chocolate milk sales. You see, Nestle serves as an umbrella corporation for over 29 different brands, including several varieties of bottled water, like Arrowhead, Deer Park, Ice Mountain, Ozarka, Poland Spring, and Zephyr Hills. In fact, Nestle water is probably the company's most profitable commodity. You see, Nestle rakes in an absurdly outrageous amount from bottling and reselling the water it extracts from the ground. Take, for instance, its processing plant in Wellington County, southwestern Ontario. According to Canada's largest citizens organization, Canadians.org, Nestle pays $3.71 for every million liters of water it pumps from the local watershed, which it then packages into single-use plastic bottles and sells back to the public for as much as $2 million. Let me break this down for you real quick. $3.71 for every million liters repackaged and sold back to the public for $2 million. That's a profit markup of 53,908,255%. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but Nestle's making almost $54 million in sheer profit on water alone. Furthermore, in its relentless pursuit of revenue, Nestle, which operates in 86 different countries, pursues ways to remove the restrictions that would prevent it from pumping water during droughts. Yes, droughts.
It's Earth Day. California is continuing to suffer under the worst drought in perhaps 1,200 plus years, which sounds weird to even say, but it's apparently true. And at the same time, mega food corporation Nestle is suffering under allegations that it's using expired permits to draw water for bottling from underneath national parks.
The U.S. Forest Service has begun an investigation into the bottled water operations carried out by Nestle. It turns out that the multinational corporation has been pulling water from a mountain spring in Southern California under a permit which actually expired back in 1988.
Switzerland, known for making overpriced wrist clocks long before Apple, but they're also home to the largest food manufacturer in the world, Nestle. Now, Nestle make all sorts of stuff, like Kit Kats in soybean and baked potato flavour, or chocolate made with child slave labour, to dangerous baby formula sold to developing nations as a more healthy alternative to breast milk, which is great for those vegan babies, I guess. Closer to home, Nestle bottles 7 different brands of water in the USA, and if you go by their websites, 6 appear to be delivered by just one guy. Look at him! Water is one of those essentials we take for granted, but just like a massage from a drunk friend going through a breakup, we expect water to be free, but understand there could be a catch. To get 1 litre of bottled water on the shelves, it takes 86 litres of oil and 3 litres of water. That's like using a whole Sizzler buffet to make 1 breaded shrimp. And in California, it's like using a Sizzler buffet that's on fire. Right now, California is having a water crisis. The state is as dry as an Israeli sense of humour. And our food overlord pals at Nestle are sucking dry some of the most precious water reserves in the state, including groundwater in the desert. Yeah, they're tapping what little water there is left underground in places where there is very little water above ground to put in a bottle and truck all over the country to be sold and delivered to your workplace by that one poor fella, leaving local desert ecosystems dry and residents needing to find water for drinking, washing and cooking from elsewhere. Normally, Nestle's bottled water plants would be scrutinised by the state's water authorities, but their Cabazon plant, one of the biggest bottled water plants in the country, is on the tribal land of the Morongo Band of Mission Indians. And because they're a sovereign nation, by law, Nestle don't have to report shit. At another location in California, the Swiss food giant has been taking water from the San Bernardino National Forest, even though their permit expired in 1988. That's what we would call in my country taking the piss and bottling it. But why haven't the Forest Service been reviewing Nestle's permits for nearly 3 decades?
We have a lot to do. There are a lot of expired permits. I have 660,000 acres, the National Forest, to work on, and I'm just one guy. When it becomes a priority, I'll deal with it.
Because the worst drought in 1,200 years is low on the list of priorities, right underneath hire new hydrologists. When the rest of the state is being asked to cut water use by 25%, according to Nestle's own statewide records, over the last 4 years of drought, Nestle's water use has increased 19%. And the company insists that it's sustainable.
There's a problem with baby milk powder. There's nothing actually wrong with the product of baby milk powder. It's how it is used. The World Health Organization and UNICEF say that if you could reverse the downward trend of breastfeeding, you could actually save 1.5 million children's lives. And the problem is, if it's not clearly marketed, if it's not clearly labelled, if you haven't got the instructions, right, if you can't read it, if it's in a foreign language, if the health warnings aren't there for you, then you can misuse the product, and that might actually result in infant mortality. So 1981, the World Health Organization developed a thing called the WHO Code, which isn't anything to do with Roger Daltrey swinging microphones and trout fishing. And it was about the advertising and marketing of breast milk substitutes. And Nestle signed up to the code and said yes. In fact, they went one step further. They've got a little charter here, which they give to members of the public. It says, Nestle does, as you can see, it says, Nestle does comply with both the letter and the spirit of the World Health Organization's International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitute. I thought, hurrah. They said it does support efforts by governments to implement the international code through legislation. I thought, fantastic. They also said Nestle invites government officials, health professionals and consumers to draw to its attention any Nestle infant formula marketing practices in developing countries which they consider are not in conformity with the above code. So when we found a few bits and pieces that questioned it, it was my moral duty to bring it to their attention. And we did. We got a few letters from various southern African countries that raised a question mark on it. And we found out that Nestle were having a big launch party down in Piccadilly Circus on the day of the eclipse to sort of launch their new Nescafe stuff. 3, 2, 1. Martine, are you aware of the health problems about baby milk advertising? And are you aware of those? Martine, are you aware of the health? I'm here, hiya. Are you aware of the health problems, Martine, of baby milk advertising, the way Nestle market their products and develop them? Have they told you about it, Martine? Have they aware of it? Oh, right, so is there any problem there? It's just that we got the invite and we thought we'd come along.
Absolutely no problem at all.
It's just,
can you bear with me?
Yeah, sure. What I've got here is, you know, it says here that you've got, because Nestle are in breach of the... Were you asking the photographer to take some shots of the demonstrators and all that?
No, absolutely not. No. We're just taking photographs of everything that's happening.
So there's no shots of the demonstrators or any of that?
I've no idea.
Hiya. You've been photographing for Nestle?
I don't wish to talk to you if you don't mind.
Are you from Nestle?
Yeah.
Lovely. What it is? Can you give us your name?
No, I think you ought to speak to Marion.
Martine, your charter is wrong. Your charter's fibbing here.
Well, we obviously don't feel the charter is fibbing.
Are you aware of that, Martine? Did they tell you about that, Martine? So Martine, you're all right there, sweetheart.
We don't believe in conflict. We believe in trying to work together.
I've just been sandwiched by a couple of security guards, and you don't believe in conflict.
Peter Brayback. He is the chairman of the board at Nestle. Peter recently stated that water should not be a public right, that water is foodstuff, and like any other foodstuff, it should have a market value like gold or fossil fuels and things like that. Now, this isn't a new statement for old Peter. Back in 2011, he also stated that in order to provide universal access to clean water, there's a simple but no other choice but to price water at a reasonable rate. And that roughly 1.8 billion people on Earth lack access to clean drinking water because of poor water management, government practices, and the lack of political will. And he's right. There's a lot of areas in the world that desperately need fresh water and better ways to bring them fresh water. And he sounds like, oh, that's very altruistic for a head of a CEO company.
It's great.
Yeah, the problem with Brayback is he's just really looking to put a little extra coin in his pocket because he wants to take away and privatize water, all of it, meaning that no longer will basically making it like electricity, that you have to pay for it constantly. Why? Because he works for Nestle, one of the world's biggest water suppliers. And Nestle's also that evil company that on conspiracy theory we looked into and found was they couldn't take fresh water from the Great Lakes, so what did they do? They paid off small municipalities around the Great Lakes, sunk some wells, and started pulling the water there. And now the Great Lakes have dropped 2 feet in the last, I believe, 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
That's a massive amount of water that these people are taking.
With a huge effect to fishing industries and...
Back in 2010, Peter said, if Nestle and myself have become very vocal in the area of water, it is not because of any philanthropic idea. It was very simple. By analyzing what is the single most important factor for the sustainability of Nestle, water came in as the #1 subject. I think that is part of the company's responsibility. Now, if I was in a different industry, I would have a different subject that I would be focused on. The guy wants to make money. He wants to privatize water. We saw that didn't work down in Chile when they tried to privatize water there, and I believe they started arresting people because water got so expensive that they started taking it from the rain, and then the police started arresting them because they couldn't have their own water, that it had to come from the corporation. This guy is clearly a dork for believing that water is not a right to you and I. We die if we don't have it.
Water is a human right. Therefore, it's not a commercial material. My answer to this is, yes, you're right. Water is a human right. The 25 liters of water that we need as a minimum as a person in order to live decently, this should have a price. Why? Because if we do not put a price, we will not make the investments which are necessary in order to use the most precious of the resources that we have in a more responsible manner. So the water situation gets worse and worse. And if we do not give a value to the water, those investments are not going to be made because nobody has an interest to invest because you don't have an economical return. If the value of water is zero, any investment will never yield. If the water has at least a decent price, an investment might yield. And that's why we don't make the investment. Those who emotionally appeal that water should not have any price because it is a human right, they don't look into reality.
Canadian John Devine has long fought the piracy of water sources by corporate interests. He also shines a glaring light on the manner in which small businesses and individuals with solutions to water stewardship problems are tightly suppressed. Devine and his son Mark keep constant tabs on a looming, somewhat unexpected problem. Unbeknownst to most people, the world's fresh water supplies may very well be in trouble. Devine's research also shows that unjust and misguided water management practices and policies are causing real environmental damage while threatening seafood supplies in the process. Consider Guelph University in Ontario. A highly innovative closed-loop water system for fish hatcheries was developed there. The system was eventually adapted in a business that John Devine once owned, Fisherman's Cove. That business, cavalierly destroyed in the 1990s due to a project to widen a road for a casino, recycled and cleaned groundwater to raise both bait fish and game fish. It drew far less water from the aquifer than the open-loop fish farm systems heavily used around the world. That means better fish for human consumption, cleaner water, and far less waste. Devine found he could raise each pound of edible fish with just 800 gallons of water, whereas a typical fish farm needs 10 times as much water, about 8,000 gallons, just to raise a pound of fish. But what may sound like a mere bureaucratic dilemma actually involves Nestle, an international corporation whose chairman attends the secretive Bilderberg Group meetings every year. This issue also involves various influential Canadian officials in apparent conflicts of interest.
Demand is outstripping supply as we speak, let alone giving our water away at such a cheap price. Now I'm suspicious that Nestle's has got into our aquifer through NAFTA. But whether it be through NAFTA or straight from Europe, we have a foreign corporation in Canada buying water at $3.71 per million liters. And it's got to be crazy. Our grandchildren are going to be saying, why did you do that?
Pisses me off. All of this is happening because of corrupt politics and fucking greed, and it has to stop.